Welcome to Let's Talk Passion and Purpose, the podcast where we explore the journeys of creators, leaders, and visionaries who've turned their passions into purpose. Join your host, Nicole Thomas, as we dive into inspiring stories, uncover strategies for success, and help you take the next step toward a life filled with meaning. Let's get started.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Passion and Purpose with Nicole Thomas. In this episode, I sit down with Francesco Paladino, an actor, writer, comedian, and producer whose career spans stage, television, film, and stand-up. From Netflix Orange is the New Black to touring with comedy legends and now creating films with his company, Fada Films, Francesco brings a wealth of experience and insight. In our conversation, he shares his creative journey and advice for anyone pursuing a life in the arts. Francesco, welcome to the show. So excited to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I am excited to dive in. I know that you've been working on a lot of great projects. Just to get us started, I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey.
Absolutely. Well, I started creating, as I say, with the dinosaurs. I studied at Lee Strasberg, the actor studio. I did my first Off-Broadway play in my 20s. I acquired my SAG card around that time. And that was from film and television work. In those days, you could do an off-Broadway show and sometimes in a theater that actually was hosting off-Broadway shows, because if they had sort of an in-between, you could go in there and you can bargain with them and even get like 2 nights to do something like a limited run. And, and we did that. We did that at the time. We actually did it at a French-speaking theater company that actually wanted to make some money for 2 nights. And that was where I did my first sort of writing play. It wasn't the best play. It wasn't my best work, but we all start out somewhere. I never had formal writing training. So many people had. No. Okay. My education came from writing as a comedian, touring, hustling for 10 years and writing for other comedians. I worked for Wendy Williams for 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And that evolution was interesting because I just started as a man on the street and I was writing my own jokes. And then that turned into me writing for other people. And at the time, the man who worked for Wendy, he was an amazing producer. I think he's still in the game. He's still producing, but Patrick Riley, and he had worked for Oprah before he worked for Wendy. And he was the person who took such a liking to me because he said I was easy to work with. I don't know if that was his way of saying I was talented, but nonetheless. And then my interest started with playwriting and dialogue-driven TV and film, and the rest is sort of where I am now.
I tell you, that's fascinating. Fascinating to hear your evolution. So the Actors Studio, SAG, Off-Broadway. Tell me, so when you were younger, did you always want to be in this space? Or was it something you kind of fell into and you said, okay, I like comedy and I just like this arena?
I think there were so many people that I worked around who, especially in comedy, who I assume they came from the acting world. And a lot of them did not. And a lot of them were not even interested in doing the things I was interested in, because when I was doing comedy, I mean, from the very beginning, I wanted to be an actor and I wanted to be a serious actor. And I had so many of my teachers telling me literally that I needed to embrace my comedy. And I knew I was funny, but I wanted to be the leading man. I wanted to be in a serious movie. I wanted to do serious plays. And I had teachers who told me, my acting teachers, you really need to embrace your comedy. And then comedy, the comedy started like me doing stand-up and things like that. And it was funny because here I was repressing my comedy and my acting. And then I was kind of trying to find my comedy again in my comedy. And I had always, to answer your question, yeah, I've always wanted to be here in this space. It's kind of like that universal idea of not really knowing how to get there, but knowing where you want to be. And along the way, so many sort of books have opened for me and so many people I've met, and it just hasn't stopped. I mean, this year has been huge for me. So yeah, it's been great.
I can imagine. And I do want to hear everything about 2025. I want to ask you about your training, just a little bit about your training. Your training at the Actors Studio must have been quite the experience.
Mhm.
And so young to do Off-Broadway and then to get into the actor
Mhm.
studio. How did your classical training influence your approach to both acting and writing?
Well, it was, I mean, the seriousness of it, I wanted to engage in the seriousness. It's like when
Hmm.
you're young and you find a fancy coat, you put this fancy coat on and you're like, oh, now I'm like all the adults, and there's always this moment as an artist in general, and I'm sure with other guests on your show, where sometimes you're too young to be old and you're too young and you're too old to be young, and there's always that fight and struggle. But I know that definitely when you're an artist and you're young, you're always trying to be older so you can be taken seriously. And that was always me,
Hmm.
like um there was also a level of exposure that I had to like older movies, older music, and I just was always trying to embrace that. And then of course, we get older and then we're like, okay, now I'm gonna listen to Chapel Roan. So um so the
Right.
reality is that for me, I think the seriousness of what I was doing, as I said, I couldn't avoid my humor. I had so many teachers telling me, I want you to embrace that. But it was just this sort of back and forth, because even while I was doing stand-up comedy, I was also auditioning for serious plays and going back and forth in that, and along the way, having 5 or 6 different managers along the way, people who come in and come out. After your 6th audition, if you don't get it, some of these managers would say, well, can't do anything for you, and then you go
Mm-hmm.
on to someone else and you develop this thick skin. And, I once heard someone say to me that the difference between people who make it in this industry and the ones who don't has nothing to do with talent. The people who make it are the ones that no matter how much they're beat down, they get up and they do it, and you hear people like Whoopi Goldberg talk about that a lot. Like, she
Mm-hmm.
is where she is because she just kept going,
Yeah,
people say
absolutely.
no, and you're like, but this is what I want to do. There's nothing else I can.
Hmm.
And that's the scary part. We fake it. We fake it as creatives. We find very strange ways to make money. But
Right, to keep the lights on.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. And a lot of the funny is helpful even in my serious plays, like you're writing a scene and suddenly, you know, the person is fleeing a burning building. And it's like, what do they grab? I get Doritos and a pack of pencils. It's and there's always that moment, in the most,
Right.
and I find that that's how people have reviewed some of my work too, is that they say even in the most vicious, scary moments, we still find the villain funny. There's still a
Mhm.
humor in it. And that is such a gift. And I didn't know that till I was older, because when I met people who struggled to be funny, it's
Mhm.
like, wow, I guess it really is a thing.
It is. It's talent. It is, and you definitely have it. But I want to ask you, how were you able to balance different mediums? So to go from comedy and then serious acting, how did you balance? Even though you tried to merge the two,
Hmm.
did
Um,
you ever hear someone say you need to only focus on comedy?
oh
Don't
yeah.
focus on anything else.
Oh yeah. When I did comedy for 10 years, I opened for so many great people and I worked with so many great people in great venues. But along the way, I had a lot of people who tell me, oh, you're such a great actor. You need to just do those serious plays. And there's people who are like, oh, you just need to do comedy, but you don't have a choice, because if you get a comedy show that's lasting 3 months, but you don't have a play, what are you going to do?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so it was that balance. Me working in film production now and directing in general, I'm a firm believer that I'm of the mentality that if you have acting experience, that makes you a fantastic director, because you know what's happening on the other side.
Hmm.
And you
Hmm.
have to understand that actor that you're directing. You have to understand what they're feeling. Sometimes directors want you to do something. I've been on the other side as an actor, working with a director who's trying to get you to do something and they just can't get you there. And because they don't understand acting, it's very
Hmm.
difficult to get you there. And I
Hmm.
know what an actor is feeling. Sometimes an actor can just look at me and I know what's happening, and have that, it is a spiritual moment. I know
Hmm.
you talk a lot about spirituality on
Hmm.
your,
I do.
don't be
I
afraid to bring
do.
it up here, because I'm all
Hmm.
about it. I'm all
I
about,
absolutely.
I think there's something so You know, some of your listeners are going to say, duh, but there's such a connection between spirituality and what is supposed to happen and things that
Mhm.
are out of our control and having faith and surrendering and all those words you hear.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
that's been helpful for me in my
Mhm.
journey.
Yeah, that's powerful. That's powerful. Yes, I believe that spirituality and creativity, they go hand in hand. And when you begin getting those downloads, it just flows. And it's wonderful to hear that you see that in actors because you've been on both sides right now. You're producing and directing, but you are an actor. So you can understand, as you said, just by looking at an actor, watching the movement, you can anticipate some of the needs or expectations. You know what I want to ask you? Do you feel now that you're in alignment, that you're walking in purpose?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah,
Okay.
for sure.
Mhm.
For
Mhm.
sure. I mean, and I attribute it to getting older.
Right.
I attribute it to listening more. I also believe it's in trust. You know, like I love this expression that I heard Guillermo del Toro, the director who did Shape of Water.
Mhm.
He has an expression where he says the obstacle is the path. And whenever they direct a movie, the way you put it in a very simplistic form for a director is that you may have your heart set on doing this scene in a diner and you can't get
Mhm.
that diner for that scene. Now, suddenly someone says, well, let's just use the parking. And then the parking lot turns into being the most beautiful scene because of the lighting and something is in the right place. And that's just like divine magic or divine
Mhm.
spirituality that's sort of involving in the filmmaking process. You know, like we say, you know, a lot of us artists say the art gods or the universe or God in general, whatever works for you, but you have to trust it. You have to
Mhm.
trust it and you have to have faith in yourself too, because I think
Yeah.
as you get older, you tend to have more and more confidence. And that confidence actually is what makes us trust that if something goes wrong, I'm going to be able to figure my way out of this, you know? And I think there's so much blockage. We want something to
Mhm.
be a certain way. And if we let go, most times for me at least, if I let go, it turns out better than I wanted it to.
Yeah.
Like my idea
Absolutely.
wasn't as great
Mhm.
as what the
Yeah.
powers that be had for me.
Exactly. God's plan is so much
Yeah.
bigger than ours. And I
Yeah.
was going to ask you, it's as if you read my mind, really. Francesco, I was going to ask how much of your success is tied to not only believing in yourself, but letting go, being able to surrender, like detach yourself from outcomes to let
Huge,
what you
huge.
think should be
Yeah.
actually
Huge,
flow.
huge. It's also, you know, the people we surround ourselves with. You know,
Yes.
you know, I have a huge trust system in people that I work with. I also feel like one of my superpowers that I learned, especially from being a director, is that I'm very good at casting. I'm very good at hiring people. I'm very good at
Mhm.
having conversations with people for a very short time and then realizing, even though there might be people around me, say, oh, you don't know them that well. I give them an opportunity and I find out that I get to tell everybody I told you so because, you know, there's an actor that I work with in a play. We shot a movie together. We did some projects together. And when I met her, I literally just had one conversation with her and everybody was like, so you're really going to trust her to be the lead and you're whatever? And I said, I feel something there. I don't know what it is.
Mhm.
And when she came on board, everybody who was in rehearsal could not believe how much of a magical giant this person was.
Mhm.
And you just have to trust it. And, you know, at the end of the day with production, and I say this all the time,
Mhm.
we don't work in a hospital. What's the worst thing that could happen? Really, a light doesn't go on, a microphone doesn't work. You
Mhm.
know, you have to shoot tomorrow instead of today. It's not life or death, you know, and I
Mhm.
think that's the thing with creativity. I mean, you see it in the fashion world too. People just take
Mhm.
it too seriously.
They
It's
do.
fabric.
That's true. At the end of the day, it
Yeah.
is. It has. It
And we're
is.
being and at the expense of being mean to people, you know, like
Mhm.
something's not working out. Well, let's not be mean to someone, you
That's
know.
right. Yeah.
It's, you know, and I'm all about love. Like I always want positive sets. I want people to be fed. I want people to have be comfortable.
Mhm.
I want professionalism, absolutely, but I still want people to feel like they're safe because no one feels safe,
Mhm.
you know?
That's
Yeah.
true. That's true. I can relate to everything you just said. And I don't believe people feel safe. We're not in a space where it's as if the safety net has been pulled out from under us. And
Yes.
a lot of us where we had that security and we're trying to figure out what's next, which really goes back to the trusting and believing and having faith.
Hmm.
Do you have any advice for anyone who's listening who struggles with letting go and surrendering and trusting?
Well, I think it really has to do with, I think sometimes we don't take the time to think back on previous situations that happened to us that ended in a very positive way. We tend to
Mhm.
focus, you can have 15 experiences that were all great, but that 16th one that did not turn
Mhm.
out great is the one that leaves the biggest impact. And sometimes we just have to go, that was a one off.
Mhm.
And I think we're constantly like, I think people are very stuck in this sort of higher higher education mentality, this academic mentality of like,
Mhm.
I've got a degree now, so I should be able to do everything. Right.
Yeah.
I've
Right.
learned, but we
Mhm.
don't put the same value on our years of experience, our years of relationship, our years of
Mhm.
doing the thing you do. It's like when we talk about even imposter syndrome.
Mhm.
Um, I don't have imposter syndrome. I've
Oh, tell
never
us
had
more. Never.
I've never had it because here's the thing. And once
Mhm.
again, I know I listen, one of my many people to turn to because I feel like she's done everything is Oprah.
Mhm.
And I remember she was doing an interview with Quinta, who does what's the name of the show? Abbott Elementary, the writer.
Oh, yes. Yes. Mhm.
And they were
Mhm.
both talking about how they don't have imposter syndrome. And Oprah was saying exactly what I have always thought. She just said
Mhm.
it. She said, I've never had imposter syndrome because I feel that I have had the experience to get in that room. I've had the
Mhm.
journey to get in that room. So if you get in that room, you belong there. It just didn't happen. You didn't fall in.
Mhm.
And then people say, well, what about the whole faking part? We're always faking. I mean, look at the
Mhm.
professional
Mhm.
world. The conversation
Mhm.
you're going to have with a close friend is not a conversation you're going to have with your boss at work. So
That's
we're
right.
always, I mean, you could hate your boss, but you still have to say, how are you this morning?
Mhm.
It's like there's
Mhm.
still this moment of us faking. We have to build it. And when you elevate that to the level of show business, it's
Mhm.
even more complicated because people have to be nice to each other to get jobs. And I mean, it's networking in any industry ultimately.
Mhm.
But I think for me, it really is just having that confidence and trusting that you belong in that room.
Mhm.
And what's the worst thing that can happen if you try
Yeah,
something
that's
and it
true.
doesn't turn out right? Because I think our levels of success is subjective.
Mhm.
It's sort of like you and I could be sitting here right now and saying, I just wish we could win like one Oscar, right?
Mhm.
Just one.
Mhm.
But there's someone somewhere else, maybe on the West Coast, who's going, gosh, I only have 6 Oscars.
Right. That's the truth.
And they think
Yes.
it's a failure because they can't get that sixth Oscar or they can't become
Mhm.
an EGOT.
Mhm.
That is a failure for them. So I think it's all subjective. And as human beings, if you take enough energy and enough time, you will start to find all the things that you want and you're not grateful for the things you have.
Mhm.
And I'm grateful for being able to just even know people like you and know people that have been in my creative spaces. Like we have to keep embracing them.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
We do. And I'm so grateful for our connection
Yes.
because your tribe, the people you connect yourself with, it just expands your knowledge. It's not just networking just to say that you know someone,
Right.
but it's a part of the expansion of understanding and getting wisdom so that you can keep going.
Yeah.
And I love your mindset, Francesco. I do. Tell me, how did you end up producing? And tell us
Oh,
more. I think it's amazing.
Yeah.
Tell
So,
us about your production company.
well, we started Thought to Films on a wish and a whim and a prayer. Because
Mhm.
what happened was I wanted to create this umbrella eventually, and we're doing it where we did this film, our first film, and the film is called Fata Morgana, and it under the umbrella of Fata Films. And then what happened was we dragged in the Freak Out project. And Freak Out has been something that has run for 8 years at the Stonewall Inn in New York City.
Wow,
And
8 years.
I conceived that 8 years ago because I wanted a space that was just cool, fun, and
Mhm.
gave opportunity to artists and diversified, not only the way people look, but genres as well. And then this year, for some reason, I just woke up in January and said, why don't we have a Freak Out here? So that
Mhm.
Freak Out NJ started here. So the whole production thing, really, if I rewind even to when I did my first play in my 20s, was I was tired of it as being an actor who was waiting for the phone to ring. I was
Mhm.
tired of watching very talented people around me not getting opportunities. And then
Mhm.
realizing I was the only one in the room sometimes that could deuce and figure out how to organize and throw a dinner party and, get everyone together. When you
Mhm.
have friends too. I don't know if you're that friend, but in groups of friends, there's always that one person who can get everyone together to even just go see a movie,
It's true.
you know, like because some friends can't do that. They
Mhm.
just can't even just start a group text and just sort of get people together. I
Mhm.
am that person. I want to create moments and experiences. I want a legacy of people saying like, remember when he did that? Remember when he did this? Because it brought people together. It's not about me winning awards for it. Don't get me
Mhm.
wrong. I still want my Oscar, but it's still the feeling of producing, and that's how I
Mhm.
got into producing it. Really, the simple answer is not waiting for other people to give me opportunity.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
That's powerful because so often we wait for someone to give us the opportunity. And
Yeah.
what I'm hearing is that you created the opportunity. Not
Yeah.
only did you create it for yourself, but you opened the door and you left the door open for other people to walk through. And that is commendable, commendable. So I really want to delve in a little deeper about those highs and lows, the moments when you started, and I don't know if you had fits of starting and stopping, but how did you keep going? And what lessons did you learn along the way? Maybe one or two.
Well, I think being a comedian humbles you.
Mm,
And it humbles you because you could work for some of the biggest people out there. I mean, I'm going to date myself, but I actually opened for Gilbert Gottfried.
sure.
And when
Mhm.
I opened for Gilbert Gottfried, I remember them calling me and I was so elated because I was this person who grew up watching this person in comedy and thought, oh my gosh, like, and I remember them telling me, they said, well, you're going to get this much money, and it was like a handful of peanuts and a couple of quarters. And they were like, this is what you're doing. You're opening for this
Mhm.
person. And it was barely anything. But they literally said to me after they told me, they said, if you say no, there's a line of people waiting for this. They'll do it for free.
Yeah.
And that's just how they did it.
Mhm.
And it humbles you every moment. I mean, you walk into a comedy club, switch on a light, it always smells like bleach and beer.
Mhm.
And here we go. I mean, we watch these videos online, these reels that
Mhm.
come up in Instagram, and we see these comedians and we're like, oh, these faces look so sexy and they're so great and they're amazing. But
Mhm.
when you're there, they smell.
Mhm.
The lighting barely works. The people who come see you aren't very nice
Mhm.
because you literally are a circus freak. Like when you're on stage in comedy, especially if people don't know who you are, they're
Mhm.
literally like coming. It almost feels like they're waiting for you to fail. And I used to say to people, if I could do 4 shows a week
Mhm.
and just keep doing it, I mean, really, you have to be a little touched, want to do comedy. You have to be,
Okay.
because it's a journey of just, it's painful. It's
Oh,
emotionally painful, because you can have a day where you say, it's sort of like, what was the game show? Was it where you one window and then it was like,
oh,
um
I can't remember.
you know, the one there was like, you pick door
Oh,
number one, door number two, or door number
that's what I
so
do.
that's what comedy's like, because in a lot of ways you're like, oh, you had a really great night, Francesco. Now you can either keep that great night, or you can go for door number three. And you're literally saying to yourself, well, it could be an even better night, or it could be a terrible night. Because you always want to land on a good night, because that would determine your mood. That would determine your confidence. And if I ended up picking, you know what? I'm going to press my luck. I'm going to do another show. And then it was horrible. And now you're like, so then you think to yourself, well, now I have to do another show, hoping that one will be great, you know? And it's just, it's gambling. It really is. And then it just turns into this process, and it humbles you. Comedy humbles you. It is, and people say it's frightening. After a while, it wasn't frightening to me, but it does. It teaches you a lot, you know?
I can imagine. I can imagine. How did you protect your mental health during that time as you were growing in the field?
I think it's an ongoing process. Honestly,
Really?
I think it never stops. I think it's about what I said earlier about surrounding yourself with the right people. I think it's about being brave enough to say, I can't do this alone. It's about asking people to help you. It's about saying, you know, like, there's Mental Health America has a slogan where they say, fight in the open. And their expression is fight in the open. And basically that expression means, if you're fighting, fight in front of people. And the fight is not necessarily fighting other people. It's the inner struggle that we're having. And fight in the open basically is fighting in front of people. Like, let people know you're struggling, you know, don't hide it. And I think creatives, especially, we've got this extra layer of mental health that we struggle with. And it's hard to have those conversations with people who are not creative. It's very difficult, because if you don't understand the passion of needing to create, like, people ask me, like, you know, this is a writer. People ask me, they're like, how do you write so much? I'm like, because I have to. It's not because I want to, it's because I have to. Because
you're drawn to it.
Yeah. Because, you know, I watch some of my writer friends and people I've known in the past who can sit on a book for like 3 years and never finish it. And I'm like, you really don't need it. You really don't need it. Like, for me, it's like starvation. You know, it's like you haven't eaten for days and there's a pizza in front of you, you know, and like, that's how I feel with being creative. I'm truly an alien from another planet. It really.
No, you're not. You are not. Absolutely not. I personally feel as if what you're sharing is going to help other creatives feel seen and feel heard.
Good.
And that we may have unique experiences, individual experiences, but there's an undercurrent. There's a universal theme that ties it together. And sometimes we do feel like we're on an island.
Yep.
Alone. Yep.
And I think we have to have these conversations. This is why your show is so important, because before I came on, I remember driving to my friend's, I drive to my friend's house in Canada, and I was listening to the podcast, and I was listening to a few of the episodes. And I remember just thinking to myself, like, wow, what a great place for people to just land and just listen and hear these other experiences. And you know, and I do joke about being an alien, because I tell people all the time, there's nothing about me that's any more special than people listening. It's just about tapping into that thing. Your path doesn't have to be like, it's focusing on what you want and then just trusting we'll get there somehow. You know, it may not be Tuesday, you know, it may not be in the car of your dreams, but you're going to get there. And that's how I've always trusted. And sometimes it takes longer than I want it to. And sometimes you don't get that right person yet, but
Mhm.
it does work out.
Yeah, it does. And that's divine alignment. That's divine intervention. I think answering the call is important.
Oh yeah.
How much of your time do you spend in silence? We spoke of Eckhart Tolle. I'm a fan. And he talks about silence and sitting in this space of just quietness. And of course, in the Bible, it talks about be still and know that I am God. Being still is so much a part of a creative's life. But sometimes we run away from being still because then we have to face ourselves. Do you spend a lot of time in quiet space to create?
Well, I do create by myself. I mean, the genre that I'm in, like if I was a visual artist and I painted, right? I probably my work actually the enjoyment of my work doesn't rely on an audience necessarily unless you want to have a gallery show,
Mhm.
but I feel like the genre in which I'm in, whether I'm doing a movie or doing a live performance, a lot of that has to do with the audience. But before we get to that loud audience space, it has to start with me. It has to start with that quiet. I also find a lot of silence, like a lot of us think, being quiet has to do with sitting in a room and not speaking and just, breathing. But a lot of times for me, being silent is just listening to people, just being silent and listening. It's one of the most fundamental things about acting too. People say like, what's the key to acting? It's listening. Because if you're on stage with someone, even though you know your next line, if you don't
Mhm.
hear what they're saying, how they're saying it, your line comes out and it's unbelievable. It doesn't make any sense.
Mm.
If all of a sudden your acting partner is screaming hysterically and then your line is calm, it might not make sense. And that's what real life is too. It's listening to people. Like I love to listen to people. I love to sit in public spaces, listen to strangers. I like to listen to people that I know. And, and also my job, my day to day is always talking to someone, always. So it's like, for me, it's a break,
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
love listening. That's why I love podcasts.
Yeah. You learn so much when you listen. You do. Yes, you do. Where does your inspiration come from when you're working on your projects? A lot of films, I know it's also tied to Freak Out. What's your inspiration?
Um, it's strange because my inspiration comes from so many things. I mean,
Mhm.
I have always, it's funny because a lot of the work I do is loosely related to music. You make a film, you put music in it. You a show like Freak Out, there's musicians or there's house music
Mhm.
that you're picking so that it can fit the mood. But for me, music, I've never really been in the music industry, but music's my number one. Like I love music. I listen to something and I remember just hearing, I think one of the first, because I did a series of 3 plays in 2023. They were back to back to back. And the whole concept was the same actors, but 3 different stories. And it literally was a marathon for the actors because as soon as one play was over, they jumped into the next one.
Wow.
And I remember just hearing in the first play in that series was called We're Cleaning the Woods. And I remember that play just being inspired by a Nina Simone song, just hearing a Nina Simone song and just
Mhm.
saying like, it wasn't really even what she was singing about, but there was something about it that was lonely, and then
Mhm.
all of a sudden I started to think on it and it just turned into this thing. And creating is very interesting because I mean, this, all of a sudden you've got layers of character and story and color and shape and wow, like a song. And that's not even what the song was about,
Mhm.
but that's what I felt.
Mhm.
And that's how it unravels. I'm very much too, I mean, I love subtext. I hate expository writing. I hate when people are just too straightforward. Like they want to just tell you who the character is in the first 3 minutes. Mine
Mhm.
is very layered, very dark. Um, just people having to dig for it. And that's how I find my inspiration.
Mhm. Mhm. That's fascinating, quite fascinating. How do you stay true to your passions without getting overwhelmed?
I mean, it's right now, it really is. There's so much happening, like the layers of it. Um, I really do think it's, I live in a world of analogies. And I really do think it's like, going to a buffet. And, you go to a buffet, we don't necessarily play by the food rules.
Right.
Like you sort of like, you go to this amazing buffet. One minute you're having like, chicken parm, and the next minute you're having sushi. So it's sort of like just being able to balance that without giving yourself a stomach ache.
Mhm.
So it's sort of, and it goes back once again, I keep trailing that, you know, even when we do a one person show, it's never a one person show. You're
Mhm.
always needing other people. Like right now, I've got amazing production assistants that help with film. I've got very young people who are assisting me in projects. I have people that I'm giving opportunities to do the behind the scenes, so I can be in one room while they're in the other. And I think that's important because we aren't one thing. We
No, we're
aren't
not.
one thing.
We're not.
And I do believe in finishing things. I don't believe in starting
Mhm.
something and then walking away, but simultaneously is hard. But for
Mhm.
anybody listening who thinks, oh, I need to do three projects at once, if you can't
Mhm.
complete one project, just focus on that one. And timelines, deadlines are very
Well,
important.
mhm. Mhm. They are. They are. I think some people forget that if you don't put a deadline, sometimes you'll never finish.
Absolutely.
You'll put it down, you'll start something else and leave one project undone. So, love the fact that you believe in starting and finishing. Can you tell us a little bit about your mentors? Because I know you mentioned Oprah Winfrey, uh, and you shared some powerful quotes. Can you share any other mentors who've helped you along the way, who've inspired you to keep going?
I mean, there's a lot of, I was a kid who had very little freedom as a kid. I mean, my friends used to go to sleepovers, and I'm a child of immigrants. I'm first generation Italian, and my parents had very odd beliefs. But as I got older and I met other people who also were children of immigrants, we all seemed to share the same story, the struggle
Mhm.
of holding on to our heritage, but then also assimilating to American culture. And, as far as I'm concerned, as a kid, I couldn't do a lot of the things the kids used to do. And I used to watch a lot of television. Like I
Oh, you
grew
did.
up watching
Mhm.
MTV and old sitcoms, and that was really when you think about all of my inspirations that I go back to in my brain file, and I'm
Mhm.
constantly finding these things. And I think a lot of my inspirations came from TV, like big, bold people who just
Mhm.
didn't mess around and got things done, and I
Mhm.
think there's a lot of people out there. I think in real life, it's very hard to be a Gen Xer and get older people to help you because there was always that older generation that said, well, we figured it out on our own, so you figure it out.
All right.
And now my mentality is like everybody who works with me is typically younger, and even the ones that are like my age or older, I refer to them as my kids because people I work with are always my kids, my freak out kids, because I want to be the person to help them get opportunities. I want to
Yeah.
introduce them. I mean, what's your dream? If you can open the door for someone and give them a dream, get the dream come
Mhm.
true. I mean, someone's dream may not even be that exciting. They might say, I've never had a hot dog with relish on it. And you're able to get them a hot dog with relish.
Mhm.
You're a hero.
Yeah.
It's
Sure.
amazing. The littlest things when you start to really talk to creatives, and that's important to
Mhm.
those conversations, that
Yeah.
mentorship, talking to creatives and saying, what can I do?
Mhm.
What can I do to
Yeah.
help you?
I love
I
that.
mean, I feel like that's, to me, that's such a significant part. And it's a responsibility. I
Mhm.
think it's a responsibility. I've never said no to anybody. Any stranger has ever sent me a DM on Instagram who says, how are you
Mhm.
doing this? Do you have any advice? I immediately say to them, let's get on the phone. Let's talk.
Mhm.
It's
I see
not,
that. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I'm sure you do the same thing because,
Mhm.
you're doing so much and you're showing, it's a podcast, you're writing. And I'm sure there's people out there who want, and what you find too is that oddly, people who look like you, who feel like they're in a space that, and I'm sure you probably get young women who get in touch with you who want inspiration or want some guidance, who maybe aren't heard, and that's the sad thing when you really meet people who are brilliant, who are being heard and not being seen.
True.
That's huge. We
That
have
is
such a
huge.
we have such a responsibility. We really do.
Oh, how profound. We do have a responsibility. We do. Holding space for others, especially if that space wasn't there for us as we were navigating on this creative path. Do you feel creatives should seek a mentor? Because I've never really thought about formal mentorship. I've connected with people because I'm a connector. I know you're a connector. Your heart is in that space of sharing, connecting people, like-minded people. But should we actively seek mentorship?
I think right now we're in a very difficult time as creatives. I mean, without having any kind of political conversation, I think we're in a very tough time because there's a level of trust. There's a level of trust, not knowing who you can and who you can't. And all it takes is one person who says they're going to help you and then they don't. And then we lose total faith. I always tell people, especially if you're young creative or even, as I say, a vintage creator, you could find the support in the education spaces. Like I tell young people all the time that are going to like a really great film school, a really great acting school, why are you not making better relationships with your instructors? You should be making relationships with them. I think the most valuable thing in higher education, the most valuable thing, I know this may be a controversial statement right now. I think the most valuable thing about higher education is the network. I think it's the most important thing because once you leave that school, you may have learned something, but you can't apply it anywhere if you don't have the opportunity. And those teachers, those professors that are around you are the people who are already connected to those industries. I had acting teachers at the actor studio in Strasberg, gave me my first auditions. They connected me with casting agents. And because I asked, I said, who should I be talking to? And things haven't changed. It's still the same. And we're afraid. We also have that voice in our head, going back to the imposter syndrome. Well, I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet. So what does ready mean?
That's true. What does ready mean?
Yeah.
And the opportunities that you were afforded, a lot of them were because you asked. And like you said, so many people are afraid.
Yeah, you can't be afraid of rejection. I mean, I'm in the wrong industry if I'm afraid of rejection. I mean, or people tell me no, then, and the thing is that it's always a catch-22. It's always like, you need the experience to do this thing, but this thing will give you the experience. And we try to explain people what that means. I think the roadblock can be removed when we start to look for networking opportunities. Any industry now will tell you statistically, people who succeed are the ones who network. And then we have all this social anxiety in our society, so nobody can go network. I mean, because I know you've been a part of networking opportunities and I've seen you post things in the past and I think to myself, like, bravery, because some people can't do it. They can't turn it on and off.
Yeah. But you somehow have to find the courage to step in this space and try to be as authentic as possible and make those connections.
Sure.
And there are several artists who still don't trust themselves. They don't know how to network. They feel overlooked. They feel like they don't fit the mold. Do you have any advice for them?
Well, I think the experience is different for everyone. Like I said, I use the expression all the time, being aware of the fact that we can be tone deaf sometimes. What works for me because of the way I look might not work for someone else. And I've seen it. I was auditioning in a time where people could say anything they wanted to you. when you were going to a casting agent's office. And I was there when, some of the least meanest things that people said to me was, oh, I used to always get, one of my famous ones was, you're too good looking to be the best friend, and you're not good looking enough to be the lead. And I would get that all the time. And then I had friends who would get even worse because they were commenting on someone's race, femininity, masculinity. You're not enough. You're too much of this. You're too much of that. Nowadays, if you don't get a job, really, you don't know why. But back then, it was okay for them to tell you these certain things. I mean, and that can affect your confidence, and people have different experiences. My experience is my experience. I can't say I haven't faced obstacles. I faced obstacles. I've had things happen to me, but I think everyone's story is different. I think there's also a story of class that's involved too. We hear this a lot with the Nicole babies and things like that, but there's also this class thing where if someone's connected to someone rich or connected to someone famous, they're suddenly like, all bets are off. There's more of an opportunity. But I think that it really is about the motivation, wanting to do it. And I always go back to just having conversation with people. Don't ever be afraid to reach out to someone you haven't talked to in a long time to network with. And don't be afraid to reach out to people you don't know. Because if people reach out to me on DM, I more times than not, will say to them, let's get on a Zoom call or let's have a phone call, because there's nothing to lose. It could benefit me at the end of the day. This person could be someone I want to collaborate with.
That's true. Oh, what great advice. Great advice. If you had a moment to speak with your younger self, what would you say?
Whoa, fasten your seatbelt.
I love that.
I'd say, kid, fasten your seatbelt. It's going to be a bumpy ride. But also being able to tell our younger self, it's not as bad as we think it's going to be.
Oh,
because if we knew that then, maybe we wouldn't have traveled with so much anxiety. I mean, the older you get, you might have more anxiety about certain things, but then there's certain things that you used to worry about that you're just kind of like, yeah, that's a waste of time. Don't even think about that. You're good.
Just have faith. Have faith and learn to surrender and trust the process.
It's hard when you're type A too.
Yeah, no, that's right. Perfectionism gets you every time. What's next for you?
Yeah, we have a lot happening. We're in post-production for Fata Morgana, which is our first film. It's going to be a short. We have focus on making Freak Out NJ bigger. Our Freak Out for all you New Yorkers who may not want to come into New Jersey, because we know it's scary for you to come out here. We say, Stonewall Inn. If you go to their Instagram, you can see when they're doing their Freak Out. Their Freak Out is once a month. Ours is once a month, typically not the same Monday. But as that show gets bigger there in Stonewall, and it's, already huge, we want bigger shows in New Jersey. We want the support of the audience. I say this at every show I do live. I say to the audience, we want to support local. We want to support our local business. We want to support our local artists. But in order to do that, we can't just like a photo on Instagram. We have to show up and or pay or both, because that's what's going to keep these things going. I didn't create the world. This is not the way I want the world to be, but requires money. And the thing about venues that people don't understand is that if we don't support shows, venues will not continue to support the shows that are there. And one day you start looking around you, and I know it happened in my local town, is that over the past 20 years, we saw 3 live theaters get shut down because people were more interested in watching Netflix. So if we want those things, we have to actively participate. And some of the people who do the best job with that is, and I know this sounds like a really wild idea, but people have done this to me before. I cannot come to your show tonight, but I bought 2 tickets. Can you please give those to 2 people who might not have the money for those tickets? Try that. And the theater doesn't care even if those 2 seats are empty, because someone paid those tickets. else. So it's still supporting your local artist. And I know it's one person out there is going to hear that and go, I never thought of that.
I never thought of it either. And I think that's a great tip.
Yeah.
That's a great way to support. I'm excited for everything that is going to unfold this year. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. And I hope you'll return again.
I will. Thank you for having me. And I can't wait to be invited back.
Thank you for joining Let's Talk Passion and Purpose. I hope you're leaving inspired and ready to elevate your journey. Remember to subscribe, rate, and share if you enjoyed today's episode. Stay connected, follow your passion, live purposefully, and we'll see you next time.